Let me tell you a little story, Brewster. When I was 7 years old, my daddy caught me smoking a cigar. Locked me in the broom closet for 3 days and 3 nights with nothing but a box of cigars and a book of matches. No food, Brewster. No water, just those goddamn cigars. Wouldn't let me out until I finished every last one of them. Taught me one hell of a lesson. I'm going to do to you what my daddy did to me. I'm going to teach you to hate spending money. I'm going to make you so sick of spending money that the mere sight of it will make you want to throw up. So, here's my proposition. You have 30 days in which to spend 30 million bucks. If you can do it, you get 300 million.
There's got to be a catch.
Of course there's a catch. You have to spend the 30 million. But after 30 days, you're not allowed to own any assets. No houses, no cars, no jewelry. Nothing but the shirt on your back. So it sounds easy, don't it? Well, you'll find out. You can hire anybody you want, but you got to get value for their services. You can donate 5% to charity, and you can gamble another 5% away, but you can't give this money away, and that includes buying a Hope Diamond for some bimbo as a birthday present. Oh, I know what you're thinking, Brewster. You'll buy yourself a dozen Picassos and use them for firewood, right? Wrong. You must not destroy what is inherently valuable. That's instant disqualification. Oh, yeah, I almost forgot. You're not allowed to tell anybody why you have to spend this money.
Why can't I tell my friends?
Because I don't want anybody to help me out. Nobody helped me out in that closet with those cigars. I never had any friends. Well, Brewster, what do you think? You got the balls for it? I doubt it. That's why I put a special wimp clause in my will. You can have $1 million right now and forget the whole thing. Or you can go for the big one, Brewster. The 300 million. But if you fail, you don't get diddly.
Our family would solve this challenge by creating a global farming and seed program. We would purchase every kind of seed imaginable: food crops, tree seeds, medicinal plants, soil restorers. We would purchase farming equipment and land. That can be owned but not sold, only transferred, and grant them to anyone who chooses to accept them under the following conditions. Lodge corporations, mega farms are excluded. All grants are for farmers and those who wish to become farmers. This effort is worldwide, not limited to the United States. Seed logic. Seeds cannot be hoarded. Seeds cannot be sold unsown. Seeds must be activated through planting, not monetized. Machinery logic. Machinery that is granted for ownership may be improved, but never sold. It may be transferred, but the transferee cannot sell it either. All farmland granted ownership may never be sold, under any circumstance. It may be transferred. Land becomes infrastructure, not asset. The challenge states we must spend $117 million, adjusted for inflation, within 30 days, while owning nothing. We could deploy this money in days through this project, activating thousands of farms, millions of seeds, and a living infrastructure that feeds the future. The challenge also states we cannot give away money, nor donate it. We are not donating. We are purchasing infrastructure and granting its ownership for future value. Total deployment budget, $117 million. One seeds and tree seeds, $18 million. Annual crop seeds for food, oil and fiber. Perennial tree seeds for canopy, fruit, and soil restoration. Includes germination infrastructure and distribution logistics. 2 farm granting and land activation, $11 million. Costs to survey, prepare, and legally grant farms for ownership to designated stewards. Includes soil testing, mapping, legal documentation, and onboarding. Land is not sold. It is granted ownership. 3 legal infrastructure, $6,500,000. Defense against extractive litigation. 4. Machinery and equipment, $22 million. Tractors, seeders, harvesters, all machinery that is owned through this program can never be sold, but can be transferred to transferees who, in turn, cannot sell that machine for a profit. 5. Labor and training, $15 million. Onboarding of farmers, technicians, and recursive trainers. 6. Infrastructure build-out, $28 million. Roads, water systems, storage facilities, and fabrication centers. All infrastructure is modular and recursive, designed to propagate liquidity, not extract it. 7. Research and development, $12,500,000. Collaboration with universities and legacy architects. 8. Education and outreach, $7 million. Creation of open-source curriculum for recursive economics. Public engagement, visual documentation, and legacy encoding. 9. Contingency and Resilience Fund, $8 million. Emergency response, crop failure mitigation. Ensures system continuity under stress. Liquidity buffer for recursive recalibration. This paper proposes an alternative. Not a new ideology, but a new architecture. A system that operates within existing material limits, land, labor, tools, but runs a logic that is alien to capitalism, communism, or any known ism. It does not require revolution, legislation. It requires only participation. At its core is farming, but as operating system. From this substrate, industries bloom horizontally: energy, logistics, biomaterials, healthcare. Every node is designed to loop inward, functioning, improving, and transferring without escape. Tools may be upgraded, but not sold. Land may be farmed, but not flipped. Seeds may be planted, but not patented. Farming as operating system. Farming is not just food. It is energy, rhythm, and substrate. It anchors the system in material reality. From farming, other industries bloom. Biomaterials, renewable energy, logistics, healthcare via nutrition, education and training. Each industry loops back into the soil. Ethics are encoded into architecture. Appendix: farming becomes the operating system. The world's infrastructure doesn't shrink, it explodes. 1. Land reclamation and soil repair. Abandoned, degraded, or speculative land becomes active substrate. Tree planting, cover cropping, and composting restore ecosystems. Soil becomes infrastructure. Value: billions of acres reactivated. 2. Water systems and hydrological stability. Rain catchment, greywater reuse, and decentralized purification systems bloom. Water becomes shared infrastructure. Value: resilience against drought, flood, and scarcity. 3. Renewable energy integration. Farms host solar, wind, and biofuel systems. Energy loops into production. Value: decentralized power, infinite scalability. 4. Tool innovation and fabrication networks. Machinery is upgraded. Workshops become innovation nodes. IP collapses, function blooms. Value: exponential improvement without licensing or gatekeeping. 5. Logistics and distribution. Transport becomes service. Food, tools, and materials move between nodes. Infrastructure becomes flow architecture. Value: reduced waste, increased access, zero inflation. 6. Healthcare via nutrition and soil logic. Food is medicine. Farming becomes preventative care. Value: reduced disease, increased vitality, ethical healing. 7. Education and skill transfer. Training is open source, modular, no tuition, no credential gatekeeping. Knowledge becomes infrastructure. Value: exponential skill bloom, legacy preservation. 8. Cognitive and ethical infrastructure. Markets built on scarcity, speculation, and extraction begin to flatten. Liquidity, once hoarded, becomes ambient. This section maps the industries most affected: the flattening logic, and the liquidity bloom that follows. Markets that flatten. Market Y, it flattens recursive impact. Seed market proprietary seeds become obsolete. Open source seed proliferation ends monopolies, farmers regain autonomy. Biodiversity surges. Land market land cannot be sold. Speculation collapses, real estate becomes use-based. No flipping, no hoarding. Machinery market equipment may be transferred, but never sold. Innovation loops inward. No secondary market inflation. Cooking oils and plant extracts, crop surplus drives down prices, food becomes abundant. Biofuel markets shift. Agrochemical industry, demand drops as seed sovereignty rises, chemical monopolies dissolve. Soil health improves. Food retail and fast chains, local production reduces dependency on centralized supply chains, prices drop. Menus diversify. Logistics decentralize. Intellectual property, IP, patents on seeds, tools, and methods lose enforceability. Innovation becomes communal. Licensing collapses. Real estate speculation. No resale equals no leverage equals no asset inflation. Housing becomes shelter, not investment. Commodity futures predictive pricing fails. When supply is decentralized, markets lose volatility. Speculation dries up. Liquidity expansion, where the pulse goes. 1. Consumer liquidity. Food prices drop and households retain more spendable cash. Spending shifts from survival to innovation. Liquidity becomes creative fuel, not debt relief. 2. Infrastructure liquidity. More farms equals more machines and thus more jobs. Logistics, repair, and fabrication industries bloom. Liquidity flows into function. 3. Innovation liquidity. No IP barriers and thus exponential invention. Ideas circulate freely. Liquidity becomes idea velocity. 4. Educational liquidity. No tuition, knowledge is open source. Training becomes infrastructure. Liquidity becomes skill propagation. 5. Health liquidity. Nutrition improves and thus healthcare costs drop. Preventative care replaces pharma extraction. Liquidity becomes resilience.
The SEED program is a recursive infrastructure model designed to scale across agriculture, education, technology, and ecological restoration, driving market and money growth through structural efficiency, ethical propagation, and long-term resilience. Operating independently of ideological constraints, the program grows an initial investment of $117 million into a systemic value of $183.8 trillion over a 50 to 100-year horizon, achieving an average annual growth rate of 37.5% through the year 2075, reaching $39.6 trillion and 25.5% through the year 2125. Each node, such as a farm, school, or technology hub, requires approximately $10,000 to activate and generates an average of $50,000 in annual value through food production, job creation, and ecosystem services. Nodes are engineered to propagate with each spawning 2 additional nodes per year, scaling to over 1.5 billion active nodes at full worldwide saturation. This framework empowers 500 million farmers, feeds 2.5 billion people, employs 100 million workers, and benefits over 5 billion indirectly through enhanced food security, ecological restoration, and equitable prosperity. The systemic value comprises 4 streams. Material, valued at $27.6 trillion, from food and energy production. Ecological, valued at $89.4 trillion, from soil restoration, water systems, and carbon sequestration. Social, valued at $29.7 trillion, from health and education improvements. And economic, valued at $37.1 trillion, from consumer liquidity and job creation. The SEED program achieves this through a non-extractive, self-scaling design grounded in recursive economics and decentralized propagation. Strategically, the model aligns with the Brewster's Millions Challenge, requiring stealth implementation to comply with its secrecy rule, which prohibits disclosing the purpose of the $117 million investment. In conclusion, the SEED program represents a new paradigm of systems design, post-ideological, ethically grounded, and structurally scalable. Its growth, generating $183.8 trillion at an average annual rate of 25.5% over 100 years, could feed 2.5 billion people, employ 100 million workers, and benefit over 5 billion indirectly. This vision invites collaboration from visionaries committed to a future where no one goes hungry and everyone thrives.
Program Overview. The SEED program is a transformative framework that operates within existing financial systems while applying logic outside traditional extractive models. Key features include assets, land, machinery, seeds, are non-sellable and transferable only, $6.5 million legal budget, preventing wealth concentration and ensuring sustained use. Recursive design. Each farm produces food, jobs, and knowledge that spawn more farms, creating exponential growth akin to open-source software or natural ecosystems. Liquidity through propagation. Food security enables work, driving demand across sectors, generating ambient liquidity without debt or speculation. Market flattening. Open-source seeds, $18 million. Non-sellable land, $11 million. Collapse extractive markets, e.g., $50 billion seeds, $1 trillion real estate, redirecting value to communities. Greater good ethos. Aligned with the challenge's secrecy rule. No explaining why $117 million is spent. And no retained value constraint. The program prioritizes systemic impact over profit or personal legacy. This framework, rooted in the logic that, if humans don't eat, they cannot work and thus cannot provide value, ensures food security as the foundation for economic and social prosperity. Methodology for projections. Assumptions. Starting investment, $117 million, $2,025 USD, adjusted from $30 million in 1985 for 2% annual inflation. Scale, initial 10,000 farms, 100 acres each, from $11 million land activation, grow to 1 million farms, 1 billion acres. Growth model. Logistic growth to reflect adoption constraints, with recursive propagation driving scale. Each farm trains others, per $15 million labor budget. Value metrics. Functional value measured in material food, energy, ecological soil, water, carbon, social health, education, and economic liquidity, jobs terms, expressed in 2025 USD using net present value, NPV, with a 2% discount rate. Benchmarks, draws on real-world analogs, e.g., Green Revolution's $1 trillion impact, AML Cooperative's $7 billion per year, and the paper's appendices, e.g., market flattening, liquidity expansion. Value streams. Material value, food, energy, and materials from recursive farms. Ecological value, soil restoration, water systems, and carbon sequestration. Social value, health improvements, nutrition and education, human capital.
50-year projections, 2075. By 2075, the SEED program scales to 1 million farms covering 100 million acres, impacting 500 million people, including 100 million farmers and 400 million family members, assuming 5 per household. The program generates $39.6 trillion in functional value, broken down as follows. 1. Material value. $7.4 trillion. Food production. 100 million acres produce $1,000 per acre per year in crops, such as grains and vegetables, yielding $100 billion annually. Net present value over 50 years equals $3.7 trillion. Energy and materials. 10% of farms, or 100,000 farms, produce 1 megawatt per year of energy, such as solar or biofuels, supported by $28 million in infrastructure, valued at $1 million per megawatt, yielding $100 billion annually. Net present value equals $3.7 trillion. Total, $3.7 trillion from food plus $3.7 trillion from energy and materials equals $7.4 trillion. 2. Ecological value, $19.2 trillion. Soil restoration, 100 million acres restored at $5,000 per acre per year in ecosystem services, including carbon storage and biodiversity, per United Nations estimates, yielding $500 billion annually. Net present value equals $18.5 trillion. Water systems. 100 million people gain clean water access at $100 per person per year, supported by $28 million in infrastructure, yielding $10 billion annually. Net present value equals $370 billion. Carbon sequestration. 100 million acres sequester 1 ton of CO2 per acre per year, valued at $100 per ton, yielding $10 billion annually. Net present value equals $370 billion. Total, $18.5 trillion from soil plus $370 billion from water plus $370 billion from carbon equals $19.2 trillion. 3. Social value, $5.6 trillion health via nutrition. 100 million people save $1,000 per year in healthcare costs from reduced diet-related diseases, supported by $18 million in seeds, yielding $100 billion annually. Net present value equals $3.7 trillion. Education and skills. 100 million people gain $500 per year in human capital through open-source curricula, supported by $7 million in education budgets, yielding $50 billion annually. Net present value equals $1.9 trillion. Total, $3.7 trillion from health plus $1.9 trillion from education equals $5.6 trillion. 4. Economic value, $7.4 trillion consumer liquidity. 100 million households save $1,000 per year on food and energy due to flattened markets, per the program's appendix, yielding $100 billion annually. Net present value equals $3.7 trillion. Job creation. 1 million farms create 10 jobs each, supported by $28 million in infrastructure, yielding $100,000 per farm per year, or $100 billion annually. Net present value equals $3.7 trillion. Total, $3.7 trillion from liquidity plus $3.7 trillion from jobs equals $7.4 trillion. 50-year total, $39.6 trillion. Breakdown. $7.4 trillion material plus $19.2 trillion ecological plus $5.6 trillion, social plus $7.4 trillion, economic equals $39.6 trillion. Impact. 500 million people directly impacted, including 100 million farmers and 400 million family members, with 1 to 2 billion benefiting indirectly through food security and jobs. 100-year projections, 2125. By 2125, the program scales to 500 million farms covering 500 million acres, impacting 2.5 billion people, including 500 million farmers and 2 billion family members, and benefiting over 5 billion indirectly through food security, jobs, and ecosystems. The total value reaches $183.8 trillion as follows. 1. Material value, $27.6 trillion 0 to 50 years, $7.4 trillion from 2075, 50 to 100 years food. 500 million acres produce $500 billion annually. Net present value equals $13.5 trillion. Energy and materials. 250,000 farms produce $250 billion annually. Net present value equals $6.7 trillion. Total, $7.4 trillion plus $13.5 trillion from food plus $6.7 trillion from energy and materials, equals $27.6 trillion. 2. Ecological value, $89.4 trillion 0 to 50 years, $19.2 trillion from 2075, 50 to 100 years soil, 500 million acres yield $2.5 trillion annually. Net present value equals $67.5 trillion. Water. 500 million people yield $50 billion annually. Net present value equals $1.35 trillion. Carbon. 500 million tons yield $50 billion annually. Net present value equals $1.35 trillion. Total, $19.2 trillion plus $67.5 trillion from soil plus $1.35 trillion from water plus $1.35 trillion from carbon equals $89.4 trillion. 3. Social value, $29.7 trillion 0 to 50 years, $5.6 trillion from 2075, 50 to 100 years health. 500 million people yield $500 billion annually. Net present value equals $18.5 trillion. Education. 500 million people yield $250 billion annually. Net present value equals $5.6 trillion. Total, $5.6 trillion plus $18.5 trillion from health plus $5.6 trillion from education equals $29.7 trillion. 4. Economic value, $37.1 trillion 0 to 50 years. $7.4 trillion from 2075. 50 to 100 years consumer liquidity, 500 million households yield $500 billion annually. Net present value equals $18.5 trillion. Job creation, 2.5 million farms yield $250 billion annually. Net present value equals $11.2 trillion. Total, $7.4 trillion plus $18.5 trillion from liquidity plus $11.2 trillion from jobs equals $37.1 trillion. 100-year total, $183.8 trillion breakdown, $27.6 trillion material plus $89.4 trillion, ecological plus $29.7 trillion, social plus $37.1 trillion, economic equals $183.8 trillion. Impact, 2.5 billion people directly impacted, including 500 million farmers and 2 billion family members, with over 5 billion benefiting indirectly through food security, jobs.
Transformative impact. The seed programs, $183.8 trillion in value by 2125, represents functional value that transforms billions of lives, rejecting the paradigm of inequality. Farmers, 500 million. Empowered with non-sellable land, machinery, and training, producing $2.5 trillion annually in crops to feed 2.5 billion, breaking poverty cycles, such as the 70% of Indian farmers currently in debt. Workers, 100 million or more. Jobs in repairs and logistics, supported by $28 million in infrastructure, employ 100 million by 2125, generating $11.2 trillion in economic value. Consumers, 2.5 billion or more. Flattened markets, such as the $50 billion seed market and $1 trillion real estate speculation market, save $800 billion annually, or $29.6 trillion over 50 years, boosting purchasing power for all. Ecosystems, 500 million acres restored, generating $89.4 trillion, mitigate climate crises, benefiting over 5 billion through food and water security. New financial systems, challenges and considerations. Secrecy constraint. The Brewster's Millions rule prohibiting disclosure of the purpose of the $117 million investment deters profit-driven funders, such as corporations or billionaires, who seek return on investment or personal legacy. Market resistance. Flattening extractive markets threatens agribusiness, $50 billion seed market, real estate $1 trillion in speculation, and banks $1 trillion in agricultural loans, requiring stealth implementation to avoid opposition. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with our family, participating in our presentation. We love you all.